Imagine a place where your favorite foods are always in abundance. A place where things like pomegranates, grapes, melons, berries are never out of season. A place where the men, the women, the boys, the girls all live in a peaceful, harmonious bliss. And everything is just fine. Well, King Kumasi ruled over such a place. Now, mind you, he didn't become king overnight, of course. He had grown up in the village, served in the army, risen to the ranks of general, and now had the honor and privilege of being the king. Now, the king and his beautiful wife, the queen, had two even more beautiful daughters, whom they adored. However, as the king and queen advanced in age, many began to wonder, would they ever produce a male heir to take over King Kumasi's place? But then, through the grace of the Creator and Mother Nature, the king and queen were blessed with a beautiful boy whom they called Musa. And from the first day of his birth, they knew he was going to be special. While early on, he showed signs of advanced intelligence by being able to solve the most complicated riddles that even the wisest of the wise men and elders still remain baffled. And then as a young boy, he mastered the drum, playing the most complicated rhythms while even masterful drummers had taken years to learn themselves. And as a teen, Musa had proven to be a skillful hunter by going to a place where only the bravest of the brave, the boldest of the bold would go, the valley of the dry bones, to confront and defeat its notorious and nefarious guardian, a menacing 8-foot monster known as the Ghost with the 12-inch thumbnail. But after all of this, Musa still would have one final test, one final ritual to go through before he would be considered fit to rule the kingdom. And today was the day of that test. When the morning rose with a beautiful, bright sunshine, Musa looked out the window of his room and saw all that he would eventually rule: the people, the land, the produce. And it was then that there was a knock upon the door. It was one of the servants who said, Master Musa, breakfast is ready. Musa got himself dressed and went downstairs, where sitting at the table were his father, his mother, and his two sisters. Musa was filled with excitement and went directly to his father and says, Father, is it time for the test? I'm ready. His father said, Musa, be calm. It will come when it comes. But Father, I'm ready right now. I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the test. Be patient, Musa. It will come. Eat, and then we'll go. But Musa ate and ate and ate and ate and ate at such a rapid pace that it brought a smile upon his father's face. And when everyone was done, Musa and his father got up from the table and headed out the doors of the palace. Well, outside waiting for them down at the bottom of the stairs were two guards who would accompany them through the village, which street was lined on either side with homes of the subjects and the people in the village who lived there. As they walked down this street, everyone stopped and paid their respects by bowing and curtsying and giving acknowledgement. But the men who did it, once Musa and his father had passed by them, looked at each other and did something different, because they knew what Musa was about to go through. But Musa, my friends, he didn't. When Musa reached the end of the street, and surrounding this village was a huge fortress with these gates, and the gates opened up. Musa and his father stepped outside, but the guards remained behind as those gates closed. Musa said, Father, the guards, who's going to protect us? The king said two words, follow me, follow me. As he and Musa walked and walked across the land for what seemed like miles before finally reaching the vast dryness of the desert. The king looked around, and then he took 2 fingers and sunk them in the sand and made a circle. He then told Musa, "Remove your shoes and step in the circle." And Musa did just that. The king then said, "This is where I leave you, my son. This is where everything you've learned from me and learned over the years will come into play. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, no matter what goes on, remember what I've taught you, and you stand firm in this circle, and you will be just fine." And with that, the king disappeared and left Musa at the circle, who stood there with that hot sun beating on the back of his neck and rolls of sweat rolling down his spine. He waited and waited until suddenly, off in the distance to the right, he saw a line of smoke coming towards him. And he couldn't make it out initially, but then emerging from the smoke was a huge beast, a rhinoceros with a horn heading directly towards him. Musa called out, "Father, father!" But his father had gone. "Guards, guards!" No guards came, and Musa knew soon that beast would be upon him to impale him with that horn. Musa closed his eyes and remembered some words his father had told him to say in times of fear and distress. You receive with one hand and you give with the other. You receive with one hand and you give with the other. You receive with one hand and you give with the other. He braced himself for the impact, waiting for the rhino to hit him, and then nothing happened. The beast was gone. Musa didn't know what to make of it. Well, he wouldn't have much time to rest, for now, off to the left, another line of smoke came towards him, but this time it was moving a little bit differently, from side to side, and it started to twirl. And as it was twirling, something rose from that smoke, revealing itself as a huge, venomous viper with 2 razor-sharp fangs ready to strike. Musa called out again, "Guards, guards! Father, father!" But no one came, and soon the snake would sink its teeth into Musa and kill him instantly. Musa closed his eyes again and remembered the words his father told him and said, "You receive with one hand and you give with the other. You receive with one hand and you give with the other. You receive with one hand and you give with the other." He braced himself for the impact, waited for the snake to strike. But it was gone, as if it had never been there. And Musa knew that he had survived yet another trial. So he sat in that circle and waited for what was next. And he waited until around dusk he began to hear voices. And as the voices began to get louder, they sounded familiar. So he looked off in the distance to see if he could determine who it was. And then he realized it was his mother and his sisters sitting there playing a game he'd heard them play so many times before, and this brought a calm about him, a peace over him, which was soon turned into terror. For off to the left, making its way slowly, carefully, and cautiously to his family was the king of the beasts, the lion. He was set to pounce, and Musa knew he would jump on them in just a few moments and rip them to shreds. He tried calling out, "Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" But his voice wouldn't carry. "You've got to move. You've got to move." He didn't know what to do. And in just a few moments, that lion would jump on them and certainly tear them to shreds. Musa threw caution to the wind, left the circle, and started running as fast as he could, screaming out, "Get out of the way! Move! Move! There's a lion! Move! Move!" His timing couldn't have been more perfect, for as that lion began to jump, Musa leapt up in the air, putting himself between his family and the lion. He braced himself for the impact, letting out a yell, "Ah!" before boom, falling to the ground. And as he looked around, the lion gone. His mother and sisters gone. And then he remembered, "Oh no, I left the circle. I left the circle." So he ran back to the circle as fast as he could. He couldn't find it as the wind had blown the lines away of the circle, and the only thing left were his shoes off to the side. Musa then collapsed to the ground and started weeping uncontrollably until his father came up behind him, patting him on the shoulder and says, "Rise up, my son. Rise up." "But father," says Musa, I failed you. I left the circle. I'm sorry. I failed you." The king replied, "No, my son, you didn't fail me. When you stood before that rhino, you showed strength and courage. When you stood in the face of that viper, you showed resilience, perseverance. But when you left the circle to go sacrifice yourself for your mother and sister and your family, you showed the compassion and heart that it takes to be a leader. No, my son, you didn't fail. You've exceeded my every expectation, and I'm proud of you. Come, it's time to go home." So with that, Musa put on his sandals, and he and his father went back to the village. And this time, when the doors opened, it was lined with people again, but this time they were chanting, "Musa, Musa, 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 Musa." And as Musa and his father made their way down the street and approached this long table that was filled with people and filled with food and drinks and bread and desserts that they all loved, Musa ate once again until he had his fill. And afterwards, he went to go stand with the elders and the wise men and other leaders like his father, so he could watch, listen, and wait for his time to lead. And that's the end of that. Thank you.